my cup, all my doors are open. Cut my sauce for coconut, all my eggs are broken. Jack's my ardent, gig my shade, woe my road is cold.
As chance would have it, both Alan and myself were in Boulder, Colorado. He has formed the Jack Kerouac School of Disembodied Poetics at Naropa University. And I had money at the time. I was starting a TV network that I got on the stock market, and I thought my choices were cocaine, ski bunnies, ski lodge, or hang out with a Buddhist at Naropa University. And I thought, oh, in the long run, the Tibetan Buddhist scene is going to be much more interesting. The great thing about Alan was he was really incorporating this Tibetan Buddhism into his life, and we had this Jack Kerouac festival of people coming from all over the country, and academics and journalists, and the meeting of Kerouacs on the road in American literature and all that sort of thing, and a lot of the famous Kerouac pals. And so I volunteered to help, and because I dealt with media a lot and been in media, I worked with the media. And so we're having a media meeting, and the Trungpa Rinpoche, the guy that founded Naropa, a Tibetan, very educated Buddhist Tibetan, was also alcoholic as could be. Sadly so. He reminded me of an American Indian with a genetic proclivity that they just didn't handle alcohol well, like Northern Europeans or something. And that's not racist, that's genetic biology. You can read up on it if you want. So we're having a meeting, and we're talking about Trungpa, the leader of Naropa. So the question was, what do we tell the media about the drunken leader of Naropa, the guru? But he wasn't a guru. He didn't try to be a guru. He was very learned and wrote great books and stuff.
If we're going to discuss spirituality at this point in this particular class, I feel very nervous myself, and so should you, that we are not building mutual deceptions between each other.
And so I thought he had been in a car accident and had painkillers for a while, recovering, and back injury, that sort of thing, normal. But so I said, well, maybe we should talk about his car accident and that sort of thing. When they asked about, is he drunk? And they said, like Alan said, oh no, we should tell the truth. We should say he has a real problem with alcohol. He gets drunk. Nothing more, nothing less. So I thought that won't work, but the Naropa Festival began, and I was assigned to the guy from the LA Times, Los Angeles Times, big paper, and it's the first night, and the LA Times guy asked me, oh, I hear Rinpoche has been in a car accident, and he was up on stage, and I said, no, he looks drunk to me. You think he's drunk? I said, well, I don't know. I didn't drink with him, but he certainly looks drunk. Well, it was very fascinating. Because we didn't try to hide anything, there wasn't the big expose of the drunken guru stories that you read so many times. Nobody was disillusioned because nobody lied, and the coverage was about the Kerouac Festival and Kerouac's meaning in America. So that was sort of like a really fascinating deal with just be truthful. There was an incredible night. Rinpoche was so drunk that he barely could get up on a stage. I mean, two people helped him walk across, and he's up there trying to speak to the microphone, and he's just dead drunk. There's no other way to say it. But these Tibetans also were real masters of meditation and their own spiritual arts, we could say. He's going along as a really drunken human being for a little bit. Then he says, kind of slurred, I've got good news. And he completely changed, became a lucid, non-drunk person. And he said, there will be no nuclear war. The good news is no nuclear war, and the bad news is now we have to learn how to construct society without all the fear of having opponent to blame for everything, which was communism at that time. There's going to be no nuclear war. So it was a prophecy that he was making. And he did that. And so for about a minute and a half, 2 minutes, he was utterly lucid as any speaker gets on any stage. Then once he had delivered this vision, he went back into his drunken body and had to be helped off the stage. So Alan introduced me to kind of a certain Buddhist truth and a lot of deep spiritual experiences that you can get from those Buddhists. I liked Ginsberg and the Beats because they had lots of practical knowledge too, which is always useful. They never had any money. They all took vows of poverty, and if Alan made money from a university poetry reading, he'd share it around with all the other guys, all the other beatniks, and they never had money. They had crash pad. And I was talking to him one time, and they'd been in India, and there's beggars in India, and they poor people, and they couldn't just give money, a little bit of money to everybody. That's meaningless. And so they had a little powwow in their little crash pad in India and decided they had enough money to help one person. And there was a well near their house, and a guy was falling apart, going downhill, starving on the road to death. And so by circumstances, they adopted that particular man. And like so many of the homeless, he had come to the city to get a job. And he was trying to hook up with a relative, but if you're from a village and you go to, say, Delhi, and there's 6, 8 million people, oops, it's hard to find your relatives. And he couldn't find them and had no money and started starving to death, and then nobody hires you, and then you look like you're starving to death and people avoid you. And so they nursed that guy back to health simply by water and food over time, etc., and a place to sleep. And as he regained his strength, and then they pooled their money and bought a third-class ticket on the train back to his village where he could survive. And so instead of being kind of that general, oh, these poor people, he said, well, if you have any resources, then you try to use it wisely and try to help a person, realizing you can't do everything, you can do something. And as I've traveled, that proved to be very good advice. You can't, giving a little bit here and there to everybody that's got a hard luck story gets nowhere. But finding somebody that you connect with and can actually help, that's meaningful. And you find that many of the homeless, even it's true in the United States, people think they have a connection or resources, and they get to a place and get isolated, and their life sort of unravels. So I appreciated the beatniks as mentors and giving me really practical knowledge of how to be in the world.
Bye.